Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Anthony Day. I'm a member of York Community Energy, and I'm here to welcome you, in fact to give you a very warm welcome to tonight's Energy Café on the theme of making homes warm without costing the earth. Let me now introduce our first speaker, who is Russell Smith. He is founder and MD of the Parity Projects Company and the RetrofitWorks, a multi-stakeholder cooperative which York Community Energy has joined in order to set up a local scheme connecting installers with homeowners and landlords. His general aim is to show you how to minimise energy consumption for minimum spend. His theme this evening is stoking the national rollout of low energy renovation. So please would you welcome Russell Smith.
Hi, I've done a lot of talks like this over the years in various parts of the country. What I've done for the first time tonight is not talk about individual houses. A lot of people get me to come and talk about, I've got a 3-bed semi and I really need to do this to it. Show me what to do. I think these guys will help you do some of that later on. I'm going to talk about the UK's problem. In a nutshell, we've got to renovate 27 million homes in the next 25 years. And we've really failed at doing anything at scale at all. So I'm not going to give you a slide or a graph or anything like that. We've just been rubbish. And the key thing about it is that we need a model for which we can all hang our hats on and say, okay, well, I know my role in that model and I can really work at scale to try and get that done. It started for me, 2005, I started my own company. And that was because I renovated my own home. I got my heating bills down to £50 a year. I'm a civil engineer, I shouldn't be doing this at all. And I had to work out how to do it. I had to come up with a sort of bit of software I idealised the methodology for myself. I had to train up my own builders because they didn't have a clue. When I was getting planning permission and building control sign-off, I had to train up the local authority. And so it went on. The architect I had was very prepared to have an open mind, and he goes off, he does this kind of thing on a regular basis now. I had 3,000 people come and visit my house over the course of 2 years during the project because there was an appetite where I live in London to know more about it. And everything kind of slotted into place. Well, blimey, I should be doing this every day. So I set up my own company. I didn't really know what it would do. You can tell that by the name. It's a bit of a weird name. But the idea was I just wanted to get other people to be doing this to their houses too. Because without any shadow of a doubt, it is the most critical thing we need to do in the UK to mitigate against climate change. The most, against all other things. People bang on about flying. People talk about electric vehicles. Houses has not even been attempted. We've not even started the journey on getting every house renovated. And it's the most amount of locked-in carbon there is in any sector. I've won a load of awards for all that. You don't want to know any of that. And I built a company that wanted to sort of look after its own by paying me a salary and colleagues a salary so that we could get out and do more of what I'm doing tonight. We've helped individual households, about over 1,200 individual householders, to have a plan on what to do with their house. We project manage the renovation of some houses as well. I don't like to spend most of my time doing that, but I have to do it to keep on learning. We have software now that helps us to help large landlords and local authorities to be able to understand their stock so they can go forward. So we've actually analysed 3.5 million houses in the UK now, and we still keep picking up clients. I run training courses. I'm a member of the UK Government's Green Construction Board. I'm a founder of the Retrofit Academy, which runs training courses now for professionals, and I'm a founder of RetrofitWorks, which is mainly what I'm going to be talking about tonight. RetrofitWorks is about the link between actually impartially giving advice and managing stuff and, well, let's get on with it. So RetrofitWorks is a vehicle for that. Oops. So the key thing for me is getting all you lot to understand that every house is completely unique. The way you live in your house is unique to you. The building itself that surrounds you is unique. So giving advice to an individual householder has to be about specifics and understanding that building. These are 40 houses in Sutton, within a mile of each other, that we analysed as part of a build-up to something called the Green Deal, which you may or may not have heard of. using my own software. It's a very detailed analysis of these dwellings, all built within about 5 years of each other, about 1900, so all Victorian houses. All about the same type of house, no bomb damaged houses, new ones in the slots, they're all the same sort of building. So the same weather, same sort of house. If you'd carried out an energy performance certificate on this house, anyone heard of an energy performance certificate? Yeah, they would all be the same. The automated recommendations that come out of the EPC would be identical. So the infrastructure that we've got to work with is dreadful. So from that moment on, I thought, I just need to be doing this and getting the word out there that this house here, this is my nan, and she lives in one room in a Victorian house because she doesn't need to heat any other rooms. Tell her to invest in her house, and she'd say, well, where's the money? If I spent 300 quid putting insulation in my house, when do I get that 300 quid back? Well, it's actually about 150 years. But tell this family here, and this red blob here is external wall heat loss. They spent £11,000 on external wall insulation. That paid for itself in under 10 years because that's the thing for that house that was the best thing to do. This house here, orange, big orange chunk, that's heat loss or inefficiency in the heating system. That's the thing to invest in. Change a boiler, paid for itself in less than 3 years. But you've got to understand that that is how we need to be building up our mechanism to get this done at scale. Here's the list of things that you need to do to be successful in making each of those individual houses work. By the way, I will say, I've got too many slides to go through, but they're all for you. You can circulate them afterwards. The important ones are first, and they gradually get less important through. So if I stop at any particular point, you know. A whole house strategy is massively important. You need to understand before you start your journey within a building all the things that need to be done eventually, because they ain't going to all get done at once. People don't want to go through the pain I went through. Now, I've heard you've done through it a lot for your house too. It's a pain in the arse. You don't want to do all that work in one go because, frankly, your family will not thank you for it. It's probably going to get done in 3 or 4 chunks over a period of years. But unless you have that plan and you know that you're going to do that because that's a priority, they're not going to do that and that. You can't plan for these things because if you do things without thinking about all of them, you'll be blocking the later ones and it will cost you money to undo the things that you should have thought of in the first place. So you should get that whole house plan. Detailed design for those things that you've decided to do up front. Do I need to pay for it by finance? Or have I got the money already? Good luck to you if you've got the money already, but the finance people will want to see these plans. Procurement, sorry about that word, but it's about pinning your contractor down to commitments to make sure that they actually do what they promised. Translating your design and your vision to the contractor, you might need a specialist to help you do that translation. Most construction stuff falls because we're crap at communicating with each other. Builders don't ask the right questions, you don't know what to tell the builder, and so it goes on. Cost control, we usually forget about that stuff. We need to do it every week as we go through a particular project. Warranties, guarantees, quality assurance. Get all that stuff in place and your building might actually do what you thought it might at the start. There's often a big gap between how a house performs when you've done a retrofit than what you think you might get at the start. The more we do this stuff, the better the outcome, the more likely other people will do it because you're proud of what you've achieved. And that's what this is all about if we're going to get 27 million homes done. Why isn't everybody doing what I did or what you've done? Why isn't everybody doing it? Basically because the offers we're making people are dreadful. And your offer needs to include all of these things. Some of them are implicit, you might be explicit on certain things. People like a cheap loan, start with that, fill in all the rest afterwards. But has everyone heard of the Green Deal? Yeah? It was a dreadful offer. It was one offer, basically, to everyone in the country. Because it was so tightly regulated, everyone had to fit in a certain box to be able to offer it. It's like walking down all these lovely restaurants outside and they all had the same menu. I mean, how rubbish would that be? So what we're trying to do with this RetrofitWorks model, cooperative, of trying to get everyone together that could do their thing really well, we're saying, well, we've got local authorities, charities, estate agents, community groups. They all have an angle, they all have a relationship with people. They've got a constituency of residents that they represent or work with. They know who the customers are. They could go to the Green Deal provider and say, we've got all the customers. Like farming, agricultural co-ops do with all the milk. Come on, Waitrose, give us a good price. We could do the same thing to the lenders. And Of course, we're not even worried necessarily about the Green Deal now. We could go to any loan provider, with anybody out there that could do this, and local authorities are thinking about this too. The other reason this isn't happening in the UK is because of our lack of thinking in terms of this being cyclical, okay? In construction, it tends to be Mrs. Miggins calling up Bob the builder gives a quote, wants to do the work as quickly as possible, bugger off and not come back because it hasn't allowed for any price to sort out any of the little things that it could do quite right in the first place. And in London, that kind of works because nobody talks to each other. Around here, I guess, but you know who the bad builders are because your neighbours told you to steer clear of them, okay? Where I'm from, you can get away with it. But really, if we don't want to do this thing in one hit, and telling you now, people will not, you've got to do it in 3 chunks, as I said earlier. We've got to think about this cyclically. Plan the job, do it well, measure the benefit, show there is a benefit, and Mrs. Miggins will be telling all of her neighbours to do it. But including in this cycle is thinking about what this house is going to be by 2050 if we're going to do the planning well. And you can't give an energy performance certificate to a builder and expect them to know what to do, because that's not right. You've got to put some kind of specification in place, designs. All types of contractors will be in this space. 80% of the value of the construction industry in the UK are the small jobs that are unregulated. Maintenance, decoration, 80% of the value of the industry is that kind of work. Building control officers are not involved. It's Mrs. Miggin talking to a plumber and saying, can you do me some stuff, please? And they work out what that is, what does stuff mean, and somebody gets paid for it at the end of it. Completely unregulated. So we need everybody to be in this place in order to make sure both of those two people are informed that they're not missing the opportunity. And importantly, they're not blocking the opportunities for somebody who buys that house later. It's expensive for them to undo that crap job to do the job they really want to do. The industry is built on self-certification. Gas-safe engineers signing off their own work and saying it's wonderful, and 2% of them being audited by Gas-safe or government. We need to be checking work quality. We need to be making sure that house really performs, reading the meters afterwards. Have you saved the energy you expected? That's a virtuous circle that we need to be aiming for our industry to work very well. I'm going to put this line down the middle. I'd quite like to see if anybody can guess what that line means. What are those guys on the right compared to these guys on the left?
Doers. People do things. Installers versus...
I'd love you to tell an energy auditor they're not a doer. Some people say on-site and off-site. I'm saying biased and impartial. If somebody is trying to give you some advice, you need to know they're on your side. Yeah? If you go straight to a builder asking for advice, do you think they're giving you advice for your benefit or their benefit? Has anybody ever tried to get impartial advice on how to fix a roof? The only people you can find are roofers. All right? Our industry is completely built around this fact that there is virtually nobody impartial out there. Trust is gone. We've got to rebuild a model that enables us to, trust being an actual core of that model. That's what we're trying to do with RetrofitWorks. The key ingredients to get everybody to get their house done by 2050, 27 million homes, is to build a model around this word of trust. So there are some key ingredients, and if I stopped here, I'd be happy. Okay, but there's more. Don't worry. Every single house has got to be renovated to a high performance. Now we could probably debate. Some of you who work in the industry might know more about this than others. But there's what standard are we aiming for? I'm not going to go into that unless we have time in the discussion later. But every house has to be renovated to a high performance. We can't ignore any house. Every person that lives in a house or works in a house at some point must have access to great knowledge that knows, so that they know that this particular building has got a trajectory to go on and the ideal things for that to be done. And that can't be arduous. It must just be there and available. Every lead, every opportunity, every person ringing up and saying, I've got a leaky boiler, or I really like a new kitchen, or I've got bad indoor air quality, or anything to do with that house, it's got to be leapt on as an opportunity for reducing the carbon footprint and the quality of life of the resident that lives in that building. So that means giving a smattering of information to everybody that has an interface with the house. The whole house plan I told you about, that full list, everyone needs to understand that all things need to be done every individual person that might move into that house subsequently might reprioritise, but they all need to be done. And the final two things are just about that industry. Industry 2.0 needs to be awesome, because people do not trust it right now. You might trust one or two builders out there that have done a really good job, but I tell you what, they're probably busy and you won't get them for a year. Yeah? This is not normal. This has to become normal because 27 million homes need to be done. So there are three ingredients that make trust, or create trust. The first is knowledge, exceptional knowledge, being, presenting people with rigour within that knowledge, so you can prove that actually that's the right answer. That's the right answer for you. The second subset of that is you need to be able to communicate that really well. If you use loads of jargon, you've lost them. So really good knowledge and analysis. The second is that whoever's giving that advice is on the customer's side. Yeah? The third is that you are genuine. You're the real deal. You're doing it for the right reasons. You're authentic. Those three things, tried and tested academics all over the world have come up with those three ingredients that engender trust. Okay? So analysis, get the right tools. If you're authentic, you guys, well, you've nailed that already. You're here and you're willing to learn, right? So you are communicators. You are the people that can make this happen. And you might think I'm not a trained building professional. You're able to communicate with people that this is the right thing to do straight away. Okay? I'm going to skip because it's a bit chewy. So RetrofitWorks has been built over the last 7 years. It started with all these organisations you can see here. And it started when the Green Deal was looming over the horizon. It looked dreadful. And I wrote to all of these trade associations and said, all of your members, small companies in the UK, are going to be swallowed up by the big boys who just want to do it their way. And this is actually a ground-up movement we should be creating here to try and get the trust into the industry. And they paid a bit of money into this to try and help people like this. There's some characters out of the animation on our website that I put on here, who want to be able to communicate with builders. And this is one of the key sticking points at the moment. These conversations are awful. These people are intimidated by these people, whether they think they are or not. And if these people have got a good idea of what they're talking about, these guys don't want to know. So we need intermediaries. Advocate members. York Community Energy is one of those organisations, but even here we've got a situation where this client is wanting some advice on how to deal with this person, and it's not, you don't engage, you don't have a formal relationship with the supply chain in order to be able to do that. So RetrofitWorks brings this to the party. Customers often get very narrow and unattractive offers from the supply chain. They're not aware of the benefits. So we just had a chat about things to do here, and the classic is, if you ask anybody walking down the high street, what should you do? What things do you want to do with your house right now to save energy? They might say windows, and we had that chat just now. Single glazed window swapped with a double glazed window right now would take 90 years to pay for itself. 90. Nothing wrong with changing windows. It's nice to have light in, keep the burglars out, that kind of thing. But if you wanted to, I've got £500. I want to have the best use of that £500. Windows is the last thing you do. And if somebody's got their head around that, don't have the supply chain confidence to actually do it. It's because this trust stuff. People can't necessarily articulate that, but that is what's stopping them. Practitioners, the supply chain. Actually, I don't know anybody that wants to deliberately do a bad job. They just don't necessarily know they are doing a bad job. Right? That's an open door, actually, I think, to helping local supply chain to learn and to get on with it. It's got to be on their terms, because taking time off to train is expensive for them. Even if it's offered to them free, taking time off is tough. They don't invest because they don't think these people want it. These conversations aren't happening. And if they did get into it, they really could use some help to actually deliver this stuff. So they want help with the dreadful paperwork, explaining in detail what the priorities might be for a householder. That has to be learned. They need help to do that. And advocates, like yourselves, really want to drive change, struggle sometimes to identify the people that really need their help, haven't got access to a defined, reliable local supply chain, and actually you've probably got a good interest in trying to drive the local economy here. There's nothing better We're trying to get houses renovated locally by local people that can have a double whammy. You're reducing people's bills and the money stays in the economy to try and drive that. So it's a really critical thing. And RetrofitWorks sits in the middle because these two types of organisation are members of our multi-stakeholder co-op. We sit around the table, we design local schemes together to try and get it off the ground. What's the point of these guys designing something these guys do not want to deliver in? It's got to be an attractive price, it's got to be something they're going to benefit from. And actually, sometimes the glue that can make this happen is finance. We're working with 5 different banks at the moment, who in total want to lend £10 billion into the UK's home improvement market, and they've never seen a model that can really give them the trust in reliability and the risk reduction to be able to do that. And we haven't cracked it yet, but we're in a lead as far as I'm concerned with all the others that are working in this space. So very crudely, the model is about getting getting advocates who represent different bunches of people for very different reasons. These are wanting to do things in their home. Yeah, this person here is freezing cold, can't afford their bills. A piece of loft insulation can help solve that problem. This guy's here. They've got young kids. They just want to be comfortable. This is a landlord. They want to get their minimum standard up so they don't get penalised by the local authority. This person here, basically need their health improved. Loft insulation can help. All these people, for different reasons, loft insulation will solve their problem. We don't sell it to them with one leaflet that's the same through every door in York. We approach them all by selling that thing to them in the way that they will respond. And that's what we failed at. Trust and uniqueness of offer. Get those two right, and I do believe that we'll get everybody doing this. But it will take time. So our model is advocates on board, helping them to understand their market, terrible phrase, but it's kind of what this is about. Vetted supply chain, in other words, making sure they're not people that are going to take the mickey. They do the job well, they make a good offer. We give them templates for contracts for householders, we give them method statements, we give them health and safety training, and importantly, tools to do the job really well. So we could do with one visit, for instance, the tools we have would allow a surveyor to go to a house and give 3 quotes before they've even left the building, using local contractors that have already given us their price. So we put that much structure in place to try and speed up this process, because often one of the big intimidating barriers for a householder is, oh God, I've got 3 builders round and they always cancel at the last minute. Well, no, it's not the builder coming round, it's one of our advisors, and it could be one of you in the room, the way the model operates, that does that, will train you up, and you can actually get them to a point where they've got a very good understanding within 100, 200 quid of what this is finally going to cost before anyone's left the building. That's a great way of getting people very, very advanced through this. Oh, I shouldn't forget this one. This is really important. Oh my God, I'm really skipping forward here. And I know I've got to finish soon. Really did well, didn't I? The last one there is, how's RetrofitWorks paid for? So the advisors, the training, all that stuff is paid for by the contractors. So we put everything in place so that contractors can win work. We agree between us all round the table that we charge a percentage of the value of the work. If the model requires virtually nothing to deliver, the percentage is low. If it's super hard, like our scheme in London at the moment, there are slides on that you can look at later on, we have to deal with half of the people we deal with are vulnerable. It takes a lot of effort to get the job done, and it requires us to actually put a lot of investment into getting the supply chain sorted so they can deal with vulnerable people as well. That's a big percentage. But that's all agreed by everyone. That's the point of a co-op. We work that stuff out. And that's where cash flow becomes a problem for this model. So this percentage in London's 13.5%. So we've uplifted our contractors' prices by that much. But because they're competing with each other, and we're doing most of the work that they would normally do without us, in other words, marketing, talking to customers, giving them quotes, doing the contracts, do all of that, actually now that 13.5 has been absorbed within their price because they're realising that we're doing most of the stuff that they hate. So it does work on that basis as well. But we've got to be transparent with this. If we make a profit from this, a surplus, we're not for profit co-op, it gets reinvested. We can do more training, more marketing, or whatever. We've got loads of tools that we can work with. So this is analysis that was done before anybody's walked into the building. So some of the stuff that's being funded by Department for Energy at the moment, in 3 areas of the country, Sussex, London and Oxfordshire, we've already done an energy model of every single dwelling in the county and across London. You can log on to your house as a householder, or a local authority can log on to every individual dwelling within their boundary and see every one of the houses that are already there, automated set of recommendations for that building. And you can play around with it. The data might be wrong. Mrs. Miggins might have 5 double glazed windows, not 5 single glazed windows. So you change the baseline data, reanalyzes, bang, there's a set of recommendations. You can come up with a package for your home within about 5 minutes. And the important thing about that is it's zero cost, because sending someone to do a survey is expensive. And if you're trying to run a scheme across York, for instance, you probably have to factor in, okay, we've got to pay someone to do that. It's all very well having volunteers, but actually if you want to do it at scale, you want people employed to do this. How many houses do we survey before someone actually does something? Well, actually, that one person who goes ahead, we've got to factor in maybe 10 houses worth of failed surveys to pay for that surveyor. The more likely you can convert a household into doing something, the lower the cost of doing all this stuff. And by the way, the more members you have in a scheme like that, the less marketing you need to do, because the word just gets out. So this is very much about creating a ground-up movement. So I'm going to stop now. You can see all the lovely slides that there are for you to chew on over the course of time. But I just want to finish on one slide, if it's okay, just for 1 minute. The retrofit coordinator here is somebody that represents the householder. They're a member of the co-op, they're not a member of staff. They'll be a local person that's trained to be an expert in this field. And they come from lots of different backgrounds. These are all the coordinators working on our scheme in London at the moment. They are energy competent, they understand buildings very well, and they're commercially savvy, so they're checking quotes and they're making sure the contractor's not pulling a fast one. They represent the householder. And this is by far, the feedback we've got is that these people are really invaluable. For the scheme we have for the Greater London Authority, we're in the middle of 1,500 home retrofit at the moment. We've had 2% of people drop out, and it's completely free. They're under no obligation to go through with this at all. They can drop out any time they like. 2% of people have dropped out. A similar scheme the GLA ran 4 years ago, 50% of people dropped out. And these are really difficult people. It's not their fault. They're difficult people to work with in a scheme like this, and only 2% of people dropped out. So we've got all the ingredients, I think, that can really make this work. It's moving it to the able to pay market. I hate that phrase as well, but people that can pay for this. How do we make an awesome service, an awesome offer, so that everyone just wants to do it? And I can't answer that for you. You've got to work it out for yourselves, because you guys are York, yeah? But if you want any help to do this, I've got a model that can help you knit all this stuff together and really make it work. And it's not about the model being front and centre as its logo. It couldn't care less if RetrofitWorks is unknown in the area. It's about you guys and trying to make this work as a model that can basically get scale happening in this space, which is so important. All right? Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Russell Smith, thank you very much indeed. There's a vast amount of information, and you can see there's a vast amount more. And I'm sure you've all got questions. What we're going to do now is introduce our next 2 speakers, and then we will have a panel Q&A. So save your questions till then. Our next speaker is Kate Urwin. Kate set up Yorkshire Energy Doctor in 2014, specifically to tackle fuel poverty. It's a community interest company which offers advice to households on reducing energy costs, as well as energy awareness training to frontline staff, and quite a lot of other things which I'm sure she'll explain. Recently she's become particularly interested in how we can better target fuel poverty support. So her theme tonight is save energy, save money, be warm, tackling fuel poverty. Kate Urwin.
Thank you. So I need to do that first bit. So I've been working as the energy doctor for about 5 years, and it's on obviously quite a small scale compared to Russell. I do tend to solely work in the Selby district, but I think as you were talking, there are quite a lot of sort of common themes really that sort of underpins why I set up the Yorkshire Energy Doctor. One of the first ones is to be able to give independent, impartial advice to vulnerable households. And the second is to have someone that they can trust to do that. So I think those things are really important. And similarly, that one-to-one advice, you're saying no household is the same. I guess in terms of physical characteristics, but no household is the same in terms of their bills, in terms of their circumstances. So one of the things that I do probably the most of is home visits to vulnerable households. going back to the trust, I think one of the most important things that I've really worked hard on since I started, it is to build partnerships with other organisations. If I put a leaflet in through the door, if I put a poster up, no one is going to contact me and say, yes, I'm in lots of debt, please come and help me. They just won't, it's not realistic. So I spend a lot more time building those relationships with other organisations. So all the people who get referred to me have come through, say, housing support officers, sort of prevention workers who work with vulnerable families, fire service, councils, neighbourhood officers, anybody really who's going into social workers, anyone who's going into people's homes, have had that initial conversation, who the householder already trusts, and say, yeah, okay, pass my details on, and I'll give them a ring and go out to visit them. Because as I say, otherwise, I don't think it would work. So that's a lot of what I do, and also, yeah, I do quite a few training sessions for frontline staff, which is sort of aimed at that really, giving them a bit of a feel for what schemes are available to help vulnerable households, and talks and this sort of thing. So what I was really going to talk about to start with is just some of the main ways where I can try and help households. I should also say that Yorkshire Energy Doctor is a community interest company, which means it's not for profit. I do rely quite heavily on grant funding from all sorts of places, purely because the people going out to help aren't going to pay for the service, and obviously I need to draw a salary, so that's sort of how it works. Got quite a few projects going on at the moment, some of which are targeted at different groups. So we've got an ex-forces project across North Yorkshire, which helps anyone over 65 who's been in the forces or done national service. Warm and Well North Yorkshire helps any kind of vulnerable household who is sort of struggling to heat their home at an affordable cost. Got projects that are working with young people who are basically moving into their first tenancy, trying to get things set up right from the start to avoid any problems further down the line. Project to train community representatives with energy ambassadors, just lots of different projects that are going on really. So what contributes to fuel poverty really, in my view, a lot of it's around people's circumstances, and I'll just see people in all sorts of situations. So whether they've had a change, loss of job, health issue, suddenly having, say, an elderly person come to live with them or a child, problems with benefits, particularly universal credit, all sorts of circumstances can suddenly impact someone's ability to be able to afford to heat their home. Energy costs, paying too high prices, paying back arrears, bills that have been estimated for ages, people not properly understanding where energy is used in the home and what they can do to try and reduce that, being on wrong tariffs, billing problems, energy company problems, all sorts of things to do with the actual costs that someone's paying. And then the last one, I guess, taps into what you're saying, things to do with the physical characteristics of the house. Old inefficient boiler, visit quite a few people who just have no central heating at all, so might just be using sort of plug-in electric heaters. People who are off mains gas, which is a big issue, particularly in the Selby district where I work. A lot of people aren't on mains gas, so immediately have higher than average heating costs. Electric's been a real issue this winter with high costs. No insulation, not proper controls, anything really that influences the energy efficiency of the home. So all sorts of issues, and really when I go out and visit someone, I'm looking at trying to help them in each of those three areas. So what prices they're paying, can you get them on a cheaper deal? Are there grants that can help them? Are they getting all the sort of benefits and things they should be? And then can you refer them on to energy efficiency schemes and giving advice around how they can reduce their energy use. So energy prices, I mean, I'm sure you probably all switch your energy company, but I think it's made out quite a lot in the media that it's really, really easy to change your energy company, and it's really not for a lot of people. So particularly if you're not on the internet, it's like, well, what do we do now? Secondly, if you've been loyal to British Gas for 50 years, which quite a few people have, you know, people don't want to switch, they're worried about switching. I think British Gas might hate them forever if they do switch, but where do you go? And even if you do have the internet, you do a comparison now, there's over 60 energy companies, comes up with a massive long list, and it's like, right, what do I do now? Who do I go to? I keep hearing about energy companies going bust. I don't want that to happen. So it's about doing a comparison, giving some advice about, you know what, that might not be the cheapest, but that's probably the best one for you. And there's so much savings can be made. Visited an elderly lady last week, electric storage heaters, economy 7. She saved £740 a year by changing to a different energy company. And I think it's absolutely scandalous that it can be that much difference between different companies. But she wouldn't have changed. And so that's obviously at one extreme. Other people, maybe 40, 50 quid, but, you know, 40 or 50 quid for the same gas or electric, then, you know, you may as well do that as well. So that is takes quite a big, what do I mean? The vast majority of people will benefit from switching their energy company. And again, once you get into their house and you explain it to them, people are quite happy if you then help them do that. So, and I think the important thing is I'll always say, any problems, please ring me. Don't worry about it. I'll come back and help you. But most people do. So that's that. Yeah. So these are just few case studies. I mean, £2,500 for a year for what was like a 3-bed sort of semi-detached house.
Is it just her?
Just her, yeah. But part of that as well is her not really understanding the storage heaters and thinking, oh, they're running out of heat, so I'm going to plug in all my electric heaters. So it's trying to change to the cheaper rates, and yeah. So other people might just, if you're on prepayment, some people think you can't save, but you know, some people, one company for one, you have a different company for another. In total, can save quite a bit of money. And a young mum just moved into her first house, didn't know anything about energy or how it works, and actually she didn't even need to change company, but she could just sign up to a different tariff, nearly 200 quid a year cheaper, all set up, you know, doesn't need to think about it. So that's one of the main things. I did this last time. Oh, do I need to do that? So, accessing financial help towards bills. One of the main ones, I don't know if you've heard of this grant called the Warm Home Discount. It's £140. People with an income under £16,000 a year, if they get certain benefits, certainly if they get disability benefits. Some companies, if there's someone over the age of 65 in the property, some, if you get child tax credits, apply to your energy company, 140 quid, goes towards your bills. One of the easiest 140 quid that people can make. And for some people, if you put that straight on your meter, for example, it can make the difference between turning your heating on or not. So that's a really quick win. Dealing with energy debts, there's a lot of the energy companies have schemes where you can apply to get debts written off if there's a really good reason why those debts built up in the first place. So I've had anything from a few £100. I think the most was someone who got £6,500 written off by their energy company because they took on board the reason for it, and so that means you can start again and you're not having to pay back any money to your arrears. It's hardship funds, so I do hold a small pot of money over the winter, so if someone has run out of money on their top-up meter and aren't going to get any, say, benefit payments for another couple of weeks, I can give out sort of emergency credit to people just so they can keep things running. Income maximisation, again, are people getting all the benefits? Do I need to refer them to citizens' advice who are much more qualified in that sort of thing to help them with that? There's various benevolent funds if people have worked in certain fields that you can apply to, some of which will help with, say, if there's a shortfall for a new boiler. I have had some of those that have paid the shortfall for someone if they can access funding for the rest of it. So there's various energy supply specific schemes. I don't know if you know, but N-Power have a relationship with Macmillan. So if there's somebody in the household who is getting treatment for cancer, they can get their energy bills capped off at a certain level if they're with N-Power, and they can use then whatever heat they need while they're getting that treatment. So all of these as I'm sure you can appreciate, are done at a very individual basis. Some people won't benefit from any of those. Some people might just be one, some might be a few. So it is really done at an individual level. And then the last bit that I would really work with was making homes warmer and more energy efficient. Now, I don't know what you think about this, Russell. I kind of feel that my hands are quite tied with this because the government schemes are quite restricted. Yeah, in terms of what they'll help people with. So a lot of the people who I visit have already had cavity wall insulation done, they've already had loft insulation done. And if they haven't had cavity wall insulation done, it's probably because they're in a solid wall property and can't have it done. And there's not really the funding or schemes there to help those people. And it would make the biggest difference, undoubtedly, sort of longer term, but you just can't do anything with it.
And even then, potentially, they've got to contribute because the
Exactly.
grant isn't enough.
Yeah, and that's the issue with boilers now.
Yeah.
So when there used to be a scheme called Warmfront a few years ago, Warmfront was a much better scheme and used to cover all sorts of things, and it was usually completely free. Now, even if you qualify for a boiler, I mean, the shortfall could be anything between 250 quid up to about 900 quid. And where do you get that from? I mean, it's just not possible for a lot of people. We're quite lucky with the Warm and Well project in North Yorkshire that we can contribute towards some of those shortfalls if people need a new boiler. But it's not ideal and it's always limited. So one place, if someone had a few people who they're living on a street, this whole street's got mains gas, but they haven't, then for certain people can get a free mains gas connection to their property, and then there are sometimes schemes that can then help people get a sort of free central heating system fitted. So switching from, say, old electric storage heaters onto a mains gas central heating system will reduce their bills. I don't know if you've come across Better Homes Yorkshire. This is the York Council, and well, not just York Council, but a few local councils' energy efficiency schemes. The funding seems to come and go a little bit with that. At some stages, you can get completely free sort of loft and cavity wall insulation. And if you're in certain areas, it doesn't go on being in receipt of certain benefits, it goes on income. But for other things like, I mean, I don't think they do boilers.
In York at the moment, I think it is only boilers, or
Well,
mostly boilers.
Yeah, because I think with boilers, do they just do a loan? I think they just do a loan scheme for boilers. They did have some funding for first-time central heating systems a little while ago, but I believe that they're waiting for more funding for that. But again, it's really finding out what people need and trying to find the most appropriate place for them. E.ON will do boilers if a boiler's broken or faulty. Empower do a scheme that if someone needs heat for some sort of health reason, then you can get a contribution towards boiler repairs and heating repairs and things through that. But and they change all the time. So yeah, if there's a need for that, then it's just a case of looking into it and establishing the best route. But I also find that if you say to people, have you got loft and cavity wall insulation, they'll say, oh yes, we had it done 20 years ago, and it's like, well, how much loft insulation have you got? And it's sort of pushing people on that a bit and saying, actually, you can get more than that. So a few, making sure people on priority registers, water meters, a lot of people can save a lot of money on water meters, help with water. And I guess another important thing is referring people on to other agencies. So if they haven't got smoke alarms, get them to the fire service. If they're having trouble with getting around their house, refer them on to sort of social services, and making sure there's that link really between other agencies. I won't go into that because I don't know how much time I've got left. Am I okay? 5 minutes. I just want to very quickly tell you about a project that I did, which North Yorkshire County Council funded, which was really about trying to map vulnerability to fuel poverty. Because there's a few reasons. Firstly, if you write funding bids and you want to try and prove that there's the need and you want to provide statistics, it's a right nightmare to have to look in loads of different Excel spreadsheets for them. But it's also then, could we target measures in certain areas with high levels? And I like looking at things on a map. So it was looking at what data was available publicly at the lowest possible level. So the lowest possible level that a lot of statistics are available at is the lowest super output area level, which covers about 650 households. Unfortunately, this didn't cover York, because North Yorkshire County Council doesn't cover York, but it covers the rest of North Yorkshire. So these are some of the things you can get statistics on: households off mains gas. I don't know how accurate some of them are down to that level, but it's a guide. Some of the EPC ratings, types of central heating, those are the sort of energy efficiency ones, which are rural areas, and statistics on sort of people in receipt of benefits and that sort of thing. So, if this will work, that was quick. So on my website I've got a few different maps that you can have a play with. So, I'm used to computers. Oh, is it? Okay. So, for example, this is a map of fuel poverty in North Yorkshire. So what they have, those are all the lowest super output areas. If you wanted to look at the areas which have the highest levels of fuel poverty, you can basically filter it and say, right, all these areas, more than 14% of households are in fuel poverty, and it gives you an idea of where they are, basically. If you wanted to do it, say, what I should say actually is the blue areas are where there's the highest levels of fuel poverty, and the red areas where there's the least. And what it relates very strongly to is how rural areas are. So North York Moors, areas of the Dales and things, there's much higher levels of fuel poverty. You could also have a look at it by different districts. So if you wanted to look at Harrogate area, it will show you the figures. And then you can download all the statistics that come from the database behind that. And then what I tried to do is combine different statistics. So all the ones down the right are all the different data sets that are part of this map. So if you firstly say wanted to write, I want to look at all just rural areas, so you can filter it so it comes up with the rural areas. And then it depends what you want to focus on in a particular project. If you wanted to focus on households that are off mains gas, you can look at all these areas that have got nearly 50% of homes off mains gas. You can then say, right, within those areas I want to look at the areas which have got the highest levels of fuel poverty, and they kind of relate, but the areas with the houses that have got the worst EPC ratings. So that one is quite sort of energy related. Some of the others will look at sort of levels, numbers of people in receipt of benefits and that sort of thing. So I kind of like it because it's quite visual, and I'm doing a project in the Selby district at the moment, which is looking at taking five of the LSOAs which have the highest levels of fuel poverty and the highest levels of some of those vulnerability factors, and trying to do some specific work in those areas. So it's really a means of sort of targeting support. And I think that's probably about all I wanted to say. That's okay.
So, as Ashley says, I'm a member of ICE, and some of you might already know about the Warm York working group, but I'm just going to give you a little recap. So, there's two musketeers, there's a few more just than that, but so basically, just to get everyone up to speed, we started talking about this a while ago, so at the end of last year. And we've done a few meetings about it and things like that, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So, as you're probably aware, there's been lots of cuts to feed-in tariffs over months and years, and sort of gradually, going down, and now just nail on the coffin, they've gone right down to zero. which does pose a bit of a problem for our usual, thing, which is community energy. It does make the business model slightly challenging. So we started thinking about what other things we could do, and it's estimated that somewhere in the region of 20% of UK's emissions are due to heating of hot water. So that seemed like a nice big chunk of emissions to try and bite into. I'm sure Russell will agree. So we set up the Warmer York working group to try and tackle that. And so the thing that we like about dealing with heating is that it covers our sort of goals of fighting climate change and helping the community as well. So it's basically an insulation scheme. We want to find any ways that we can to reduce the heating requirements of the homes in York. And so it's kind of broken up into these kind of key areas. So the main one we've been looking at so far is assessments. So we've been doing home assessments, as some of you in the audience will know. And we've been going round with Andy Walker from Shore Insulation, who's been doing this kind of thing for many, many years. And basically it's all about identifying the key areas in people's homes that need improving, where we can get the biggest reduction in emissions in heating requirements, with the sort of the least effort really. So the low-hanging fruit. And then we've got the kind of next step from that is your DIY workshops or housewarming parties, as we like to call them. And so let's say you've had an assessment done, we've identified several areas where you could really save on your heating bills. The next step might be that you decide, right, I'm going to save my money, I'm going to do it myself, but you need some guidance. So we come round to your house, and basically you learn by doing. So we teach you how to install these insulation measures, and you learn as you go along. Invite your friends round maybe as well, and they can learn. You all do it together. And then after that, you might want to go into your friend's house as well. So, sort of pay it forward kind of thing. Obviously, not everyone wants to do that, or some jobs might be a bit technically challenging. So the other thing that we're looking at, and we're only just really starting to cover this, is industry contacts. So trying to pair up people who want insulation measures installing in the home with actual contractors who can do the work, and obviously Russell has been talking a lot about that. And so we've actually signed up to RetrofitWorks now, and it would be really great if we could start to get some, start to build up a sort of, contact list, if you like, address book of, decent installers in York who we can trust. We know that they do the work to a high standard, all that kind of thing. And then, ideally, bring them into the RetrofitWorks network and, sort of populate the north portion of the RetrofitWorks map. Because at the end of the day, like Russell says, a lot of these people, they don't really understand the benefit of doing a high quality job, or they just want to do it as quick as they can and get out of there, all that kind of thing. But we know that especially, with things like internal wall insulation, you have to do it properly, you have to make sure all the boards have got no gaps in them, properly sealed and all that kind of stuff. There's extra levels of requirements that people don't normally think about when it comes to this stuff. So they're the kind of contacts that we want. Like I say, we're just starting out on that bit, so we haven't really got many at the moment. And then down here, this is the more kind of aspirational side of it. This is where, we'd like to get to eventually. It's going to be harder to get there. But so we talked about, people who are able to pay for this stuff. It might be that people are able to pay, if they have a bit of help with the finance. So in an ideal world, we'd be able to offer some kind of discount. So if that's through, bulk buying of insulation materials and offcuts and things like that. It might be, I know this is quite aspirational, but, provide some kind of loan service. Ideally, some kind of community loan service where So more like a traditional community energy business model where people invest in the project and that money it then goes into the installation of the measures in the house. The homeowners pay interest on the loan, and that's your kind of return on investment for the people who've invested. I mean, Russell was talking about financing through RetrofitWorks as well. That's another avenue to look at. But one way or another, it's about removing those barriers. What's stopping someone from doing this work in their house? And it's often financial. So any way we can help with that would be great. And then one thing as well that Kate touched on, of course, is the people who aren't able to afford this stuff. What are they going to do? People who are living in council houses, or you've got landlords who don't care, all that kind of thing. So, and this is the really kind of aspirational thing. What if we had like a website where you can say, I'm concerned about climate change. I don't really know what to do about it, but I've got some spare cash. Donate some money to us, and we'll put that money towards insulating the homes of people in fuel poverty. So, like I say, that it gets kind of starts off being the most realistic up there. Just ignore that rubbish. And goes down. Yeah. So we've been talking about this for a while now. I guess the next question is, what have we actually been doing since we last talked about it? And well, the first thing, we've been doing some assessments. So, so this is Andy doing his best Walter White impression from Breaking Bad. We've been going around some houses with Andy. This is his job. He's kindly invited us along to sort of shadow him and learn from what he does. And he goes round and inspects every room in the house and suggests what kind of things we could do to save energy and money. And also, a bit exciting, we decided to make a bit of a video out of it as well. So just to give you a little sneak preview there, we'll let you know when it's finished. Watch this space. Yeah, and there's Andy just confirming that the door is in fact very cold and drafty. Yeah, so we've been doing assessments. I think we've done 3 assessments in the past few weeks. That's been really interesting. And so there's definitely some potential there. Eventually, we'd like to be able to do our own assessments. Obviously, I think we need to do a bit more training before we get there. But yeah, it's looking like a promising avenue. And in fact, that could be part of our involvement with RetrofitWorks as well, because you were talking about having the, rather than the builders doing all the quotes and stuff, it could be one of us. So that's definitely got potential there. So another thing I've been up to, there's some more house assessments. That's Andy telling me something interesting about the window. It's not. I mean, it's not really. It's just he's stood there.
Fly on the window.
What's actually happening is he's doing the silliest face possible to try and make me laugh while someone's taking a photo of me, and I'm trying desperately to keep a straight face. So the other thing that I've been up to, so we've recently York Community Energy recently invested in a thermal imaging camera. And so I've been to Carbon Co-op in Manchester to learn how to use it. And actually, using the camera itself is not really the hard part. It's more about getting the right conditions to start with to get decent images and being able to kind of interpret those images at the end. So we learned all about how to do that. As you can see, there's a nice fan on the door here. And what that's doing is it's depressurizing the house. So you're kind of sucking the air out of the house, and that kind of encourages air to infiltrate through all the little nooks and crannies in your house that you didn't really know about. It really just points out like the leakiness and how you need to make it more airtight. You can't really see that very well, but that is a stove there that's been on. It's actually been off for a while. It's been off for about an hour at this point, but it's still quite warm compared to the rest of the room, so that was quite interesting to see. So we've got some examples here. So we've got a loft hatch in the house, and so you've got before and after. So this is before the house was pressurized. It was depressurized. This is after. So you can kind of see that what you've got here is you've got little gaps around the edges of the loft hatch where the cold air from the loft is sort of slowly creeping in to replace the air that's being sucked out of the house. So obviously the obvious thing there would be that loft hatch needs better sealing for a start. It's kind of not the best quality on the wall there, but so you've got a back door here. And even before the house was depressurised, you can see around the bottom and around the edges, you're starting to get some colder spots, and then it's just kind of brought out a bit more with the depressurisation. So that was really interesting to see, and I think we'll definitely want to be using the thermal camera when we do some assessments, but it's a bit limited because you can only use it in winter. You have to use it in the coldest months, so that you've got a big temperature difference between the outside of the house and the inside of the house, and stuff like that. But I do think it does bring an extra, it brings something more tangible to the assessments as well. I think it's a really good sort of communication tool for explaining to the householders exactly what's going on with the airflow in the house, and it's something they can look back on in future as well and say, oh yes, that bit of the house, we need to do something about that. So I think it's a useful tool, but you have to know how and when to use it, basically. So it was well worth going on, certainly. And then we had a housewarming party. So Richard and Nirvana kindly agreed to be guinea pigs. So they'd already had a home assessment with Andy, and he'd identified that the floor was an issue, as is commonly the case. So suspended timber floors, you get a lot of airflow underneath, and that's cold air basically that's dragging the warmth out of your living room, and problems with air tightness and cold airflow. That's one of the big things in terms of like perceived comfort. So it's a thing that you really notice, like you really feel like the house is cold. So Andy's got his own special technique for insulating under suspended timber floors. So we got an intrepid group of YCE members and committee members and interested house owners to come and learn how to do it, basically. And I think at this point I'd like to hand over to Ivana because I wasn't actually there for the final stage of it. I'm sure she can give you a more detailed explanation.
It was more semi-final. Final. I should probably say, well, first of all, I'd like to thank, because there are several people in this room that you may recognise it from that photo, without whom we couldn't have done it, and we had a lot of help on the day. I should also say that Andy, actually, first of all, we did come up with a sort of a whole house plan of what we want to do. So we know we want to tackle the walls as well, but it made sense to start with the floor because then we can build up insulation on the inside, on the walls. So there is a sort of whole house plan for this. We didn't just randomly rip up floorboards and start with that. It is basically, it did feel a bit sort of, we only bought the house last year. It did seem like a somewhat severe way to treat the house, ripping up the floorboards. But that's what it comes down to, and basically lift up the floorboards. Unfortunately, there are some ways to rescue the floorboards, but they often take a lot of time to do, and a lot of patience, which in a workshop setup, which just didn't have the time. So we ended up, thanks to John, actually, the wood will get used in an efficient wood burning stove, so they haven't been wasted. And do you have the other pictures?
Oh, yeah.
So once the floor is up, you make sure that you make sure that all the pipe work is insulated. If it goes under the insulation, that electrics are protected in conduits so that they don't overheat, because the extra insulation could potentially lead to electrical problems. So interestingly, so we created the lattice work, which was in this photo, that's there to ensure that there's still a gap between the bottom of the void, so that air in the air bricks, there's an air brick there, and sort of several around the room, so that air can still circulate, can still protect the timber and the space underneath. But you have that you suspend the insulation onto these sort of battens, sort of lattice work. And the first layer took us, I think, 2 or 3 hours to lay because we had to be careful around the pipes and the conduits and all of that. And then Andy put the timer on, and the second layer took 10 minutes, which was quite something. So that was the second day. I think by the end of the second day, we managed to get 4 floorboards, so all the insulation of 4 floorboards in. It has been a bit longer. Apologies to Richard, who thought we would be done in 1 day, and then he could go back to work or holidays, which he's meant to be on. But instead, it's been 3 days and counting. But we managed to get floorboards down, and just this morning, the last floorboard was slotted in, and now we just have the job of sealing around the edges and having a little argument about what we put on the floor, probably, whether we just painted or whether we put lino or carpet on. But I would say it is a lot of disruption. Of course, we had to clear out the room. We had to we moved the radiator in preparation for the work on the wall later on. There's always been complications coming in. But overall, I would say it's been maybe altogether, let's say 5 days of major sort of a bit of headache and hard work. I mostly did the cooking. I left them to it. My arthritic joints gave me the excuse to do less, although I have screwed in some screws as well. But I mostly left other people to it. But it's sort of 5 days. But then from this, we should have hopefully several decades of that room being significantly warmer than it ever was. Rich already noticed the difference where he had to actually open the next door on a particular sunny day. So it will pay off for itself, we believe. And that's the start of our journey. And we would definitely, and now several people on the day said they would like to host a party. So this is hopefully the first one of many that your community energy will host. And anyone else interested, please do get in touch.
So, thank you, Ivana. So the next question is, what happens next? So the short answer is more of the same, we hope. So we want to do more assessments. Sorry, I've just got some notes on my phone, I'm not being rude. We want to do more assessments. We want to do more housewarming parties, which it sounds like we've got a few in the works. And we really want to start concentrating on building that network of contractors. That's the main thing that we want to focus on now. And we might start looking at some funding options as well. So we can get various grants and things, but most of them say that you need to have sort of previous work to apply for the grants. So part of this is we're building up the previous work now, so we might start looking at funding avenues as well. How can you guys help? Well, if anyone would like a home assessment or wants to do a housewarming party, then please let us know. We'd be more than happy to sort that out. If you'd like to get more directly involved with Warmer York, join the working group, maybe learn to be an assessor, or even just help us get this thing off the ground, basically, and that'd be great. Come and talk to us afterwards. You're more than welcome. And if you know any decent contractors in York, any installers, even if this isn't really their thing, if they seem vaguely competent and switched on and maybe amenable to learning, then we'd love to get them on board and really start the ball rolling.
Or actually, even simpler than that, if they come up with opportunities and they know they might want to alert you guys to the fact that something should be done before they do their job. There's nothing worse than a client calling me up and saying, I've just put a lovely oak floor down, can I insulate it now? Or I've just put a new kitchen in, how can I make it green? It happens so many times, so actually just contractors that are happy to refer in.
Okay, yeah, there you go. So if you know anyone who's getting any work done, or if you're getting work done yourselves, please pass on the details. Yeah, that'd be great. And finally, it's my duty as social media officer to say, please like and subscribe and all that business on your favourite social media channels. and we'll keep you up to date with what's going on and what we're up to, and any more details on housewarming parties and things like that. Thank you.
So I'm wondering whether there are any schemes for rural people to get discounted wood stoves, because there used to be, and I've never heard what happened to that scheme.
I've never heard of a scheme.
It was in Middlesbrough.
Right, no, I've not come across that at all.
I know there is a rural scheme administered by DEFRA now.
Not
But
which
not,
covers,
I don't think it covers any particular technology.
I've not come across it.
Okay.
That's it.
I just wanted, because I heard about it years ago and then had nothing, and I'm curious.
I've visited quite a few people in rural areas who would love to have that
Yeah.
fitted, and it would make a big difference to them, particularly if they've got a lot of electric and it's really expensive. But no, I've not come across that scheme, but I'll look into it and see if it's. You reckon how many years ago? Do you reckon?
8 or 10 years ago?
10 years ago, right?
Something like that.
Okay, yeah. I've heard a bit around here. But, I'll look into it.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about the people that are being forced into getting involved in direct debits, and I wonder how much you consider this to be a barrier for moving over to the schemes that we discussed in.
Kate, would you like to lead on that one?
Direct debits in terms of paying for your energy.
Yeah, there's so many firms that they insist on direct debit.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the cheapest rates you'll get are if you pay by direct debit. So a lot of people don't want to do that. I think they've addressed one issue with that sort of discriminatory nature of the pricing. So prepayment meters used to be the most expensive way to pay. They've capped those, so they've come down. Quite often they are now cheaper than someone who pays when the bill comes. So I agree, it is an issue. Companies won't force you to have one, but a direct debit, but they'll just make their prices more expensive. And certainly a lot of tariffs aren't even available to people if you don't pay by direct debit.
Right.
So if you do a comparison and say, right, I want to pay when the bill comes, the prices, all the real cheap ones go, and there's a massive difference. You just don't have access to the same prices. One thing that some companies do, because a lot of people don't like the monthly direct debits, but are quite happy to pay for what they've used for the quarter. So some companies will do quarterly direct debits, which let you get the cheaper prices off direct debit tariffs, but you're not giving your money every month, which some people don't want. There's a bit more a few more options really, because some companies will now let you do a variable direct debit, so you just pay for what you use every month. It doesn't help you if you don't want to do a direct debit at all. And yeah, it is quite frustrating when you want to help people save money and they're absolutely adamant you don't want to do a direct debit. You just don't have as many options. So, yeah.
Russell, any thoughts on that?
It's not my area of expertise. I mean,
Okay.
I'm completely out of my depth, to be honest with you.
Tom,
Same.
okay, well,
The other aspect I'd like to touch on is new technology in storage heaters in particular. We're all familiar with the blocks,
Yeah.
breeder blocks So I've come across a system by a firm in, I think it's Wootton Bassett. They have some really unique construction for a different type of storage heater, and it's far higher efficiency than the traditional one.
has anybody heard of those?
Well, interestingly, we are installing a few in London, where there are quite large areas of off-grid houses in London, believe it or not. And they're called high heat retention storage heaters. And customers that have had them love them. They're much more controllable, and they hold the heat for much longer, so you're not running out of heat by 3 in the afternoon.
It works at low temperature as well.
It's a rubbish answer anyway. Then there's not pie in the sky actually, and you can, if you're on certain types of benefits, you can qualify for having them subsidised. But there's this whole, we were talking about this earlier on, there's a tension between saving carbon and fuel poverty there, because do we really want to be encouraging use of those sorts of technologies when actually renewable heat in some way would be far better, it's more expensive to implement, but in the long term, the Committee on Climate Change, their modelling is 8 million heat pumps needed in the UK to hit our carbon targets. So every opportunity to go for that kind of technology is worthwhile. It's so much more. You can't just do a swap on the technology, can you? You've got to consider insulation, radiators, all that stuff as well.
Because they still night storage heaters.
Yes.
Because there's some other. Sorry.
No, I'm done.
I was going to say there's some other heaters that some companies are calling storage heaters that seem to work on peak time electric, and they seem to still retain heat, and then they say, well, then they'll turn themselves off during the day. But from my experience, they are costing people an absolute fortune to run. So they are using less electricity, but they're using them during the day when the prices are so much more expensive. So a few people I've visited who have had their night storage heaters taken out, and those supposedly efficient daytime storage heaters fitted, their bills have gone up. Their electric use has gone down, but their bills have gone up.
But
So
presumably they're still on Economy 7 as well, so their daytime tariff is even higher than the
which
regular
is another
house.
issue, yeah.
Russell, you mentioned heat pumps, just for the benefit of everybody. Can you just explain what a heat pump is?
Oh God. I've been told by a heat pump manufacturer that I shouldn't say this, but it's kind of a fridge working the other way. If you're a purist, that's evil. But effectively, it's pressurising liquid as it travels around through a compressor, and as it goes through the other side, it expands very quickly and extract the heat off of it, and therefore you can, just from very low temperature, as long as the engine's running very consistently, it can cool your house in the summer, it can heat your house in the winter. But it's very much connected to how you transfer that heat or that cool to your building. So, so you can't. What they kick out is a very low, constant low temperatured water, which is about 45 to 50 degrees. Your radiators run off 75, 80. So you can't just swap a boiler with a heat pump. You have to have bigger radiators. You have to insulate the house as well. So again, this whole house plan thing, it's integral. It's completely critical that you think all these things in the right order.
But am I right that the government's just announced that, is it from as soon as 2025, gas boilers will be outlawed and new houses will not be allowed to have
in
gas
new build
boilers?
housing?
Yeah.
Yes.
New build housing, which of course is a very small proportion of the whole housing stock.
But the smart money would be on them insulating the house to death so that you wouldn't need any heating. And I'll circulate it if you're interested. But there's a fantastic quote from one of the directors of Persimmon Homes last year when they were in a committee saying that what we would need is to spend X £1,000s per house to get them to a passive house standard. For those of you guys who don't know, that's where you would need no heating in that building, okay, apart from emergency situations and it's very cold. And they did a quick calculation to say, well, the bonus paid to the board last year was the exact same amount of money. So, the money's just in the wrong place. Yeah. So those incentives are awesome.
There's a question here.
Yes, just going back to the gentleman's question about the direct debits. I believe Electricity have one standard rate, no matter how you pay. They're not the cheapest, but it's all renewables. And they're actually doing gas. They're making gas now out of grass.
Okay.
I've been with them for 7 years since I moved up from London. All right. And they're investing things like in meadows for the bees, and they seem to be doing things like this. And they've been pretty good, actually. And you can pay, they've gone to monthly payments, because I think just for the cash flow, they said, well, you pay your mobile phone and your other bills by monthly payments. So I just email them with my reading, because it's not worth their while coming out. And then they email me back with the bill, and then I go into the bank and pay it with a bank payment transfer, which works very well from the ATM.
Okay.
You can pay by direct debit, and I think they've actually got the same tariff if you have to prepay meters. It's right across the board. They're not the cheapest, but everything goes into renewables. So you're paying, that's what you're paying for. Obviously, when they buy it down the grid, it may not be renewables, but everything they get back, they do put into renewables, and they don't have the shareholders. So I've been quite happy with that. And they tend to sort of go price things on N-Power the same rate. But they've gone down a bit, actually. They have actually gone down from N-Power. So I would just could recommend them, actually. I'm not getting paid for it.
I'll just declare an interest, because we signed up with Ecotricity as from the 1st of April, partly because they're going to give us a cheap charging point for the electric car.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
just got hold of it. And so I'm expecting them to actually charge by direct debit, but charge on actual usage per month, and not a flat rate across the year. So
Yeah,
we'll see.
they think it's good. Yeah, they have to.
You have a question?
Yeah, I really like Ecotricity too. I've with them for many years, but
Here we go.
I'm now with Mid Counties Cooperative,
Mm-hmm.
and they charge a very small direct debit, and you accumulate your credit, and then if you use more, you just top it up, and I pay by bank transfer, and it's really easy. And it's a cooperative, and they're using all the renewables and the gas as well, so it's really good.
There is a
And
green.
these are questions rather than endorsements.
Sorry.
There's a question in the back. This is a question or a commercial?
It's neither. It's a point rather than a question, but it's not an endorsement. I just want to come back to Russell's point, because as a couple of you in the room will know, that we had Andy walk around our house last week, and Tom was there as well, to do a whole house energy assessment. And of course, a big learning from that was, because we're thinking the boiler's like, I mean, it needs doing, and it's like 12 years old and that kind of stuff, but that's not the place to start. So Andy was kind of saying, actually, retrofitting insulation. This is a 1880s terrace house, so fairly bog standard for York actually, but the ability to achieve passive house standard, which I think a U value of like 0.5 or thereabouts, just from 0.1, is it? Okay,
Passive house
well,
architect right next to you.
right, it's low. Okay, you get it's low, just from kind of retrofitting. Now, okay, and our house is going to cost 20 grand. We haven't got 20 grand, but you know, it's just like what's possible. So it kind of drives thinking about the priorities really. So the priority isn't like wood stoves and boilers and stuff. It's actually insulation.
Again, it's following up the point, as you were saying, mostly it's about fabric first. It's about getting the house demanding less heat, and you do it bit by bit. You know, as you say, doing the whole lot in one go. If you've got a wreck of a house and you've got a lot of money, you can do it. But if you're living there, then you wouldn't dream of it.
Yeah. Get more cats was the other recommendation.
Any other points? Any other questions? Yes, please. Oh, one over there. Oh, right. Yes. Libby, what's your
I
point?
have two questions. First is for Kate. I was wondering how you demonstrated the good work that you've done with the people that you've helped. Is it mainly financial, or are you able to demonstrate energy savings as well?
Yeah, a bit of both really. So I do kind of keep, well, I guess first thing, for individual funders, we will always have to feedback to say what the sort of energy savings are. For some of them, it's more that sort of softer side as well, like, because I don't know, I think a lot of it is around people's health and well-being. If you're in a warmer home, and particularly I think if people are stressed about their bills, that has quite a big impact on mental well-being. So it's quite hard to measure, but I do have a sort of very crude sort of before and after. And then on the website, I do keep a bit of a sort of accumulator of financial savings that have been made. It needs updating, but it's not on the website, but it is over about £150,000 just from switching and debt write-offs and getting people grants and things. So, so it's quite a lot of it is financial.
Great.
And you had a second point?
Yeah, my other one was for Russell. You mentioned that with your scheme, you only had a dropout rate of 2%, but with the other scheme, it was more like 50%. And I wondered what you thought the difference was with your scheme.
The key thing is that the retrofit coordinators involved, and they are the first person that speaks to that particular resident. It's in the first instance on the telephone. Quite often we don't need to go to the house. That coordinator doesn't need to go there. That householder knows that someone's on their side. Now we've done a lot of training though with the household, with the coordinators and the contractors on recognising vulnerability, which is really complicated actually, and vulnerability can change through the job. So just having the ability to recognise that there is a situation that you need somebody else to help you with is massively important. And it can be language. I'll give you an example. A job that's happening tomorrow in Haringey, a lady referred in by a local authority, everything was going really well, got to the day of the job, and the work started, and within 10 minutes she wanted to bring out the house. You know, so no work's happened, and probably the job's already cost about £1,000. And it was because, and she'd signed a contract So we thought it was all in place. She couldn't read or write. She'd signed everything, and we'd done everything on the telephone to this particular point. She signed a contract that had been sent to her in the post, stamped, addressed, envelope sent to her as well, so it's no cost. So there was no point in this process. Did we think? Well, I guess we probably didn't need to. Can you read or write? And she could barely speak English. So these things, things you can't legislate for that come up. But we've dealt with it. We got a Ghanaian energy assessor to come work with it. So as a co-op, you could do that. Yeah, it's that stuff. Now, the previous scheme, it was a plumber that was running the job, and anybody that's vulnerable, don't want. It's as stark as that. If contractor leads on this stuff, those people are a pain in the arse, and they don't want them. So they just get ditched.
There was another question over here, Simone. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Kate if you come across damp as a significant problem in this region, and what the kind of literacy around kind of ventilation of your home is like amongst the householders that you visited.
Yeah, I mean, damp is quite common. I don't think there's a huge amount of, people always think there's another factor with damp, that it's something coming from outside or is something leaking, and obviously a vast proportion of it is from damp caused by condensation. So we'll talk to the householder about ways that they can try and minimise that. And some of them have already been to, say, the council and said and they've been told the same thing, but they don't always believe that that's the case. So there is quite a big need for sort of education around reducing damp. The trouble is that obviously one of the things is to try and have a bit of sort of low level heat, and if people are struggling with their bills, then maybe just heating one room and then none of the rest of the house. So there's lots of factors that sort of come together to cause that. It's not always quite as easy as them just saying, okay, then I'll do all those things, because clothes will be being dried inside and there will be lots of things going on. But do sort of try and do a bit of education around that as well.
From Bristol, I was just wondering, because at the start, and I appreciate this might take too long, but you mentioned that you want every house to be insulated to a high standard.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, what sort of standard you use? Because, and I think opinions vary depending on who you talk to. But for instance, Andy Walker, that we've been talking to quite a bit, his argument is, well, super insulate, put as much as you can in, because usually the cost is and the disruption is more in the work. Yep. So if you can cram in, so we put 30 centimetres rather of insulation under the floorboards because our void was 40. So put in as much as you can. Is that your sort of approach, or what?
If there's an opportunity, do as much as you can. If you were looking at the house, if you're sitting down with a digital tool and you're working out what does this house need to be by 2050, there's a kind of a curve actually. I don't know whether I can. So this is. Alright, you can't see this yet. No. Bear with me. So this is a graph, percentage saved, and this is a curve. It could be a new home that's built in Milton Keynes with solar panels. It could be your house that is built in 1880 that's had nothing done to it. This curve happens every single time. It's the law of diminishing returns. Everything you do next has to work that much harder than the previous one to accumulate its benefit. And there is a point on here where the curve starts to go just crazy. Unless you're completely loaded and you don't care. So, for instance, passive house retrofit, way up here. Loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, all the great stuff which is a no-brainer, relatively low cost, is here. There's a hinterland in here. To my mind, aiming for about a 60% carbon reduction on the house is about right, because actually the grid is decarbonising all the time. So things are, by us standing still doing nothing, all the great people doing solar panel work and putting wind turbines in the Atlantic, all that stuff, it's bringing our need to get to 100% down. So if we want a sort of a sensible area of targeting, that's what, I'm not saying don't do passive house retrofit, because some houses will never get touched. So the houses where there's an opportunity, just talk about one floor, if you get a wreck and you can do it, go as far as you can for the budget you've got. Don't hold back, because that will inspire other people as well. So there's no hard and fast answer. But I mean, I sat down with one of the professors at UCL last week to talk about this exact subject, and it started off with a conversation of, we're never going to do this, are we? There's no leadership, blah blah blah, Brexit's screwing everything, everyone's concentrating on plastic in the sea where we should be worrying about climate change, etc. I don't want to go there, by the way. So, but his view was, the grid is decarbonising so fast. The issue we've got is peak heat load in the winter, not overall annual energy use. Okay, and if we install, I think it's 10 times more wind turbines than we have right now, which are actually not impossible given the weather that we have in the UK. There's enough electricity peak in the winter to heat every home in the country, provided we put 20% better insulation in all homes. So actually, this is 20% as versus my 60%. So every house has to have something. Every house has to have something. But for the houses that we can really go a lot further. So that feels to me kind of doable. Whereas actually, I'm thinking, one day I'm thinking, I went into that meeting where we've got a tough time here. I think in the middle of all this, somehow we've got the right answer.